gentlemen, please be seated. Good evening to you all, and I'd like to advise you all that in order to improve our engagement in the democratic process, tonight's meeting will be recorded, with the audio recording being published on the Council's website. The meeting will also be filmed and live streamed. If any members of the public do not wish to be filmed, I would like you to give the opportunity to leave the chamber now if you so wish. Is everyone okay with being filmed? Thank you very much. Members are also reminded to please respect each other when they are talking, and do not speak across the chamber when other members are speaking. All requests to speak must come through me. I would also like to remind members to stand and use their microphone when speaking. Please make sure that all your mobile phones and devices are switched off or on silent so that they don't interrupt our meeting. Unfortunately, Darren Barlow is unable to attend this evening, but I'm sure we're all going to have a fantastic meeting without his prayer. So, any apologies for absence? I have received no apologies. Are there any apologies? No apologies. Yeah. Noted. Oh, sorry, Councillor Spillman, I didn't see your hand there.
Councillor Baker.
Councillor Baker, thank you very much. Councillor Kemp?
Councillor Ball.
Councillor Ball. Any other apologies? No, thank you very much. Item 2. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 30th of January 2019 be approved as a correct record, as shown on pages 7 to 36 of the agenda. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gledhill. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? No, the minutes are approved. Item 3. I've not agreed to the consideration of any urgent items of business. Declarations of interest. May I have any declarations of interest, please, from members or officers? None? Thank you very much. We move on to item 5, announcements on behalf of myself and the Leader of the Council. First of all, I would like to bring to your attention the flyer that you have on your desks, reminding us all about our Giving for Thurrock Day that we all agreed earlier last year that would be our Giving for Thurrock Day for communities in Thurrock and for charities in Thurrock. So that's a reminder of that. We also have a collection bucket at the back, so if you won't be doing anything on the 29th of March, please give generously into the bucket. As I said, it is all for Thurrock good causes. So thank you very much for that. I would also like to say I wish every member that is retiring from the Chamber, whether they're seeking re-election or not, I'd like to say thank you for your service that you've given and good luck in the May elections. Councillor Gledhill, do you wish to make some announcements?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes. I'll start with this. Next month we'll be back in the Great British Spring Clean. Local groups can take part in a nationwide campaign from February the 22nd of March to the 23rd of April by running clean-up events in their community. They can contact us via the website to register their event, receive equipment such as litter pickers and bags to help out, and for the council obviously to pick up the rubbish that has been collected together and taken away rather than just being dumped in one area. We are looking to support designated days where the communities can collaborate with the council's street cleaning teams as well. Now we have one of these clean-ups that we do quite often in Little Thurrock at the weekend. I'd like to thank Mr Harrington, who's one of the local residents who always organises these, and for all those residents who turned out, including Councillor Cherry. And we cleared a significant amount of rubbish that had been fly tips down drainage dishes or just thrown into hedgerows over the years. This included a shotgun, a large kebab knife and the remnants of a cannabis factory. So quite clearly, people will just dump anything anywhere. So the more people that are helping out to clean these places up, the better. However, on the same issue, I'm extremely disappointed with the response from Connect Plus and Highways England about little problems and the impromptu lay-bys that are forming on the A1089. I will be writing to them again in the coming weeks, not to ask that they take action, but to insist. Having responses along the lines of the police need to be enforced, or it's only going to push the problem further on down the road, isn't the kind of reasoning that I would expect from a government body to give to the residents of Thurrock. They deserve more. The effort, they've put as much effort into giving excuses into cleaning the roads. The roads should be as spotless as there were parts that are not theirs, which then forms quite nicely onto. Our teams will be clearing up parts of the our parts of the A13 as we go through the Great British Clear Up period. Moving on to regeneration, New River Retail continues to put together ambitious plans for the regeneration of Gray's shopping centre. Opportunities such as a hotel, gym and housing have been identified already. The shopping centre was purchased by the firm last year for just over 20 million and shows we are attracting investors into Thurrock with our ambitious plans by leading by example. I'll do a very quick clean cut and fill update. 2,852 potholes since last April, 99% of them filled within the statutory time. Every single pothole in both November and December were cleared on time. 1,130 acres of grass has been cut, 1,739 fly tips cleared, 3,015 tonnes of waste collected, and 3,338 fixed penalty notes have been issued for offences such as littering. As you touched on earlier, Madam Mayor, I'd like to say, obviously, thanks for the service of the following councillors that are retiring in May. That's Councillor Peter Smith, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Cherry, Councillor Coxall, Councillor Hooling, Councillor Baker, Councillor Apothecary, Councillor Cathy Kent, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Jeffries, Councillor Churchman, Councillor Head, Councillor Gamester, Councillor Tolson, Councillor Baldwin and Councillor Holloway. I'm sure it would be touching, Madam Mayor, if you give the other two leaders an opportunity to thank them for the service. But as we know, with the exception of obviously Councillor Jeffries, everybody else has put in 4 years' worth of hard work to try and make Thurrock a much better place. Councillor Jeffries has only done about a year.
Now for good behaviour.
Yeah. As Mayor said, obviously moving into the election times, obviously we do wish those well as they go forward if they are standing for re-election. As much as we all take stick from our residents at times and people on the outside, it is us that are putting our heads above the parapets and trying to make that difference, trying to make sure that the council operates as best as possible on a daily basis. So with that, Madam Mayor, I feel like I'm open up.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Kent, do you wish to say anything?
Just very briefly, Madam Mayor, I echo Leader of Council's sentiments. We talked about Councillor Jeffries having been here 1 year, but I'm always reminded that it's not the amount of years that you serve, it's what you do with the time that you serve. And I think that all of the members that are retiring this year, and we use the term retiring, their term of office is up. The majority of them, not all of them I guess, will be standing again, have in their own way made a real contribution both to this chamber, to the good of the council and to the good of their residents, and they will all in their way be missed. I look forward to seeing some of the battles ahead as we move up to the first Thursday of May. I know that Councillor Cherry, for instance, has been very active in Little Thurrock Rectory. I can't possibly imagine why, but I wish him luck, the same as I wish every other candidate luck. I hope they do well, but I hope that those who aren't wearing red rosettes do just that little bit. But to end, a genuinely and sincere thank you to all for the everybody for the service they give. Councillors up and down the country come in for on a stick. I have never known anybody in this chamber that hasn't served with the very best of intentions, and all of those standing down fit that category. They're all given of themselves selflessly. I thank them for that.
Thank you. Councillor Spillman.
Yeah, thank you very much. To echo a lot of the words that have already been said. It's been an absolute pleasure to, I mean, I'm fairly fresh really in terms of some of the people in this chamber, but it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know all of the people that are standing for election or standing down this time. It's been, I mean, I don't like many of you in this chamber, but when we're outside the chamber and in committees, you know, it's the help, the assistance, and the friendship as well has been really nice. And people, I do think this is a decent chamber. You know, I've seen other chambers that are not too far away from it. I've said it once, I'll say it again. This is not the worst chamber in the world. And there's one just down the A13, much worse than this one. I obviously some of you, I hope you're all successful, although of all I'm generally going to miss Councillor Cockshaw after May. Just like to say thank you to you in particular for your golden services. It might be the same about you, okay?
Thank you very much. And fresh is not how I describe you, Councillor. Okay, I will now take questions from the public. 2 questions have been submitted and accepted by the monitoring officer. These are set out on page 37 of the agenda. 1 question was rejected. For the benefit of the recording of the meeting, I'd ask that the questioner read out their question when asked to do so. We do have 30 minutes for this item, but I'm sure it's not going to take that long. Mr. Jones, please be escorted to your chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can you please read out your question to Councillor Watkins?
Thank you. And before I ask my question, I like to think that this unseasonable good weather we've got at the moment is what you brought over from your holiday, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Madam Mayor, in September 2017, as ward councillor for Stamford East and Corringham Town Centre, I handed in a petition and spoke on behalf of residents regards poor road conditions, surface road conditions in Gordon Road, Corringham. This is between Springhouse Road and the Sorrels. Could the portfolio holder for environment and highways please supply an update on this issue? Thank you.
Councillor Watkins, please respond.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Jones, as well for your question. Speaking of people who obviously are coming to the end of their tenure this year, it's obviously good to see you back in the chamber this evening as well. And I think it's also right to say that I do remember you delivering that petition, and I think actually some things that go a bit unnoticed sometimes is the work that councillors, some former councillors will do after their tenure as well, because they still have a vested interest in the areas, and I think Corringham residents are lucky to know people still standing up for them today. I can confirm as part of the additional money Thurrock Council got from the government, which was part of the budget in 2018, a series of works are being done across the borough. Just to name a couple of those roads, we've seen Brentwood Road, which has already been done from Chadwell, Rockwood Road, Ship Lane, to name a few, across the entire borough getting some work done. And I can confirm that Gordon Road in particular, in that particular section, will be done this year as well.
Mr. Jones, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Thanks very much, Councillor Watkins, for your reply. I know for a fact that the residents on Gordon Road will be greatly relieved because this is a major bus route, it's a major HGV route to the town centre, so they'll be very welcome with this. Could you tell us when this works may start and if there are other works to be done in and around Corringham? Thank you.
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Jones, for your supplementary. I can confirm that works will be taking place around about the 3rd week of March of this year on Gordon Road. And I can confirm that yes, there is further work to be done around the Corringham and Stamford area through this year's from the government funding from this year. To name a couple there, you've got High Road and Fobbin, sections all across South End Road will also be done, and the Manor Way, and also where we're going into 2019-2020, as part of the council plan moving forward, there'll be further work taking place, not just in Corringham and Stamford, but across the rest of the borough as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, Mr. Perry is unwell this evening and cannot attend. We would like to pass his apologies on to Councillor Head. And indeed, we send our good wishes from the chamber to Mr. Perry. And the Chief Executive has already sent our best wishes to him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7, petitions from members of the public and councillors. No notice of petition has been received this evening. And item 8 is an update report in respect of those petitions presented at full council and council offices. The report is found on page 39. Councillor Watkins, would you like to say on this matter?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to do a quick update in regards to a petition handed in by Mr Mays last time. I know he sent a couple of requests into the council, and obviously you may not be aware, but there was a report which obviously outlines this. I just wanted to let members know as well. Obviously, in regards to just a bit of a further update, the steering group, which was created back in November, continues to operate. It is a multi-agency steering group, Mr Mays. Hello, good evening. And it's continuing to apply pressure and also work with the Environment Agency. We're obviously seeking further information about what works have been ongoing, what works have been done. Obviously trying to find out as well about how the residents in Tilbury, for example, have been putting in complaints, and obviously the follow-ups from that as well. Formal testing is exactly what the aim of this group. Obviously contrary to the information which was supplied to the council back before, so that is where we're aiming to obviously go. But on top of that, the steering group is also working with the Environment Agency to ensure that the requirements which have been put on these companies, which they've set, are also being met, and to ensure that the follow-up actions which the Environment Agency, making sure there's a follow-up actions as well from the requirements they put on these companies to ensure this dust issue goes away. So with this meeting, it continues, and we'll supply further information to both to Mr Mays in the report and also to members.
Thank you very much for that update. Are there any further updates? No, thank you very much. We now move on to item 9, appointments to committees and outside bodies, statutory and other panels. Councillor Liddell, do you wish to make any changes?
No, Madam Mayor.
Councillor John Kemp, do you wish to make any changes?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Spillman, do you wish to make any changes?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item 10, report on the annual pay policy statement, which can be found on pages 41 to 58 of the agenda. Councillor Collins, you have 5 minutes to present your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor and fellow councillors. The Localism Act 2011 requires the Council to publish an annual pay policy statement for chief officers. This must be approved by Council by the 31st of March each year. Like many other local authorities, that statement includes a pay policy for all categories of employees, which reflects existing employment terms and conditions. This report seeks approval of the Council's annual pay policy statement for 2019-20. The Council's single status agreement requires the Council to honour the National Joint Council for Local Government, that's NJC, pay settlement as a minimum for a single status staff. In addition, the Council commissions an annual independent market assessment to ensure the Council's reward structure remains competitive and reflects both market and employment trends. Pay for senior managers is governed by the pay strategy and pay policy for assistant director and director posts agreed in 2009 and determined by the annual independent market assessment. The recommendations reflect from those given from the independent market assessments and from the government's budget statement published in 2018. In line with the commitment in previous pay policy statements to conduct a pay review with the intention of modernising and simplifying current pay arrangements. A review has been undertaken and agreed by the General Services Committee. This is reflected in the new policy. This year's pay policy statement follows its established format and clearly sets our intentions for pay across all levels and roles. For employees who are not senior officers, the Thurrock pay statement reflects implementation of the second year of the NJC 2-year pay offer, combined with the structural improvements approved by the GSC in October. It goes beyond the recommendations and represents a positive position for our staff, many of whom will receive higher increases whilst modernising our pay structure in line with best practice and minimising the risks of equal pay claims. Senior management salaries have been recommended for a 2% increase following the independent market assessment. We maintain our commitment to the Council's apprenticeship scheme, which continues to attract cross-party support. Under the new policy, the Council will continue to pay apprentices the national minimum wage appropriate for their age from the start of their employment. This is above the national minimum wage for apprentices and is part of our commitment to make the organisation an attractive place to draw in new talent. This policy statement reflects, as a minimum, the recommendation for the independent market assessments, Year 2 of the NJC agreement, and continues our commitment to apprentices, incorporates the negotiated outcome of the pay review, and is supported by our trade unions. We are required to publish our pay policy by the end of March, and therefore ask you to support this recommendation and agree the pay policy. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm ready to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Kay, do you wish to speak on this item?
I need to say that we will be supporting the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Spillman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's come to my attention that whenever you change banding, there are people that win more than others and don't do as well as others. Now, it's been brought to my attention a couple of instances where people are a bit concerned about how the banding changes are going to affect their own pay. Can you tell me, can you explain further how the changes in banding have been set out, who they're affected, how many staff are benefiting from them, and how many staff pay is going to stay the same? Can you put more meat on bones?
Before you sum up, Councillor Collins, does any other member wish to speak on this item? No, thank you. So, Councillor Collins, I'd like you to sum up and perhaps address some of the issues that Councillor Spillman has raised. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Spillman. Well, as I explained in my early presentation, we've got the agreement of all the interested parties, including the trade unions. They seem to find and think in agreement and acceptable. However, if you want more information, I'm sure we can furnish you with that. To summarise, many dedicated and hard-working people have worked tirelessly on delivering this pay policy statement for the year 2019 and 20. They have succeeded in the delivery of a review which the requirements of the National Joint Council for Local Government requires. No one will lose from this review, and many will gain, especially our hard-working apprentices who will benefit from a wage above the standard national minimum wage for apprentices, and deservedly so. I'm also happy to tell you that this policy enjoys the support of all the trade unions involved. Therefore, I ask who in this chamber could be against it. I ask the chamber to agree with the recommendations as written on 1.1 on page 41 and 42 of our report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are members in agreement with the report?
Agree.
Is there anyone against? Or any abstentions? No, then that report and the recommendations are agreed. We now move on to item 11, which is our report on the capital strategy that Councillor Head is going to report on. Can I just bring to your attention the paper that's on your desk? It isn't an amendment, it's actually 2 corrections because of a mathematical error. So please take that as read, the paper that's on your desk. Thank you, Councillor Head. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Previously referred to as the Treasury Management Strategy, this is clearly very largely a technical paper. The paper and the work that it reports on underpin how our commercial focus and that is having a direct benefit to preserving the services to which residents use and depend. It articulates the mechanisms and indicators that the Council must work and set to adequately finance services. And of course how we finance our £250 million capital programme that the Leader will talk more on later this evening. The strategy has clearly evolved over a number of years. This literally quite goes back to even MRP changes introduced back in 1989. Through to some of the more recent changes regarding their own local investment activity. Council is required to confirm its annual MRP provision, which is being set this year, or proposed to be set at 6.4 million. We do this so when the time is right, the repayment is best financially suited to make the payment for the authority and quite indirectly to the taxpayer. And we do that to make sure we have adequate balances to meet set timetables. For residents, the key points of note out of this is that in 2018-19, i.e. this year, we will look to come in at £13.6 million of earnings through investment activity. That's 10% of our revenue, Madam Mayor. In 1920, that goes up significantly to 23.4 million. That's over 1/5 of council spending. That is from initiatives and investments as documented within the report. Madam Mayor, I submit the report as written.
Thank you very much, Councillor Head. Councillor John Kent, do you wish to speak on this item?
Again, the same, Madam Mayor, that we will be supporting the recommendations on page 60.
Thank you. Councillor Spillman?
I need to say what we support.
Does any other member wish to speak on this paper? No? I will hand back to Councillor Head to conclude. Thank you. To sum up.
The report is written, Madam Mayor, and recommendations as proposed on page 60 of the report.
Are all members in agreement? Agreed. Any against? Any abstentions? No, thank you very much. We now move on to item 12, which is the report on the General Fund budget proposals. And I hand to Councillor Gledhill to present that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we all remember, roughly 33 months ago, the Conservative took administration of this council after 6 years of Labour control. As I've outlined before, many times, we were told there was not enough taxpayers' money coming in to supply basic services such as street cleaning, cutting grass and filling potholes. We had a budget where the reserves had not been reviewed for 6 years despite much press written to the contrary. A budget where the graph of doom reigns supreme. Leaving a council that was quite frankly dying a death of 1,000 cuts to make a political message rather than getting on with delivering and supplying public services. Now in those 33 months we've seen external pressures put strain on an ever-decreasing taxpayers funded income from government, which we've faced head-on and not only tackled but met within budget. Indeed, as a council we received £3.3 million less in direct support than we did in 2016, yet despite this, the only service cuts that have been made are those agreed in previous budgets before we took administration. We saw the highest number of unaccompanied asylum seekers reduced down to the maximum assumed level for any local authority of our size, but it does fluctuate and it is on the way up. Flight equipment and staff was replaced at the cost of £13.5 million over both the capital and revenue budgets to replace that was either sold, unserviceable, or they were released from service to ensure, as mentioned, the streets are cleaner, bins are emptied weekly, and the parks and green spaces are cut and usable by all. I remember my first budget speech, only after 9 months of being elected, I brought to you the outcome of the same cash envelope that had been agreed previously that year. We'd stuck within that budget. Had we stuck to that budget, my apologies, we would have seen no street cleaners, no grass cutting, and massive overspends in children's and adult social care, other non-statutory services continuing to cost the taxpayer money month after month and so on. But instead, I brought you good news. Nearly £500,000 extra reserves at that point, kept the weekly bin collections, street cleaners removing tons of rubbish re-employed, and a small surplus of 44,000. Boy, a small surplus of only 44,000, how that's changed. We also promised in that budget £1 million increase in the Environment Department for cleaning Cuss and Fillet, 420,000 to go into reserves, £1.3 million worth of investment in play equipment for our parks, 8.75 million for extra refuse and environmental support vehicles to ensure that we can collect the bins and clean the streets, and up to £2.6 million worth of redeveloping the civic amenity site, or the TIP. Leap forward another year, only did we deliver this, but we exceeded again. 3 million into reserves, one-off budget surplus of 2.3 million, and a promise for year on year for the term of that medium-term financial strategy. We assigned 250,000 to tackle antisocial behaviour, which, as I outlined in my portfolio hold report last month, has been delivered and delivered results. We replaced, as we promised, the bin lorries and the plant fleet. We assigned more money to challenge the lower Thames crossing proposals and to help with the local plan consultation. This December, with the one-off surplus for 18-19, we've set aside nearly £1 million extra for extra police over 3 years, £500,000 for mental health summit and support, £500,000 for dedicated school grants to help the higher needs unit, £1 million for our Curb It campaign to protect and improve green spaces across Thurrock. But I have to keep on mentioning about the one-off surpluses. These are not something we can use for day-to-day running of the council. So I couldn't, for instance, say I'm going to put an extra 250,000 into adult social care packages, or supply more staff to schools, or put 3 extra bin rounds on for collections, as all this would do is put pressure on the council taxpayer when these surpluses eventually dwindle in future years. Equally, making sweeping statements and announcements making massive spending commitments on surpluses that are not in the bank is also dangerous. Yes, we can outline what we'd like to do, but conservative prudence, that's conservative with a small c, prudence, would say that the approach of waiting for the money to be in the bank is much better. Equally, we do not know what the pressures in the year may be to support the long-term delivery of the investment strategy. Just imagine if Thurrock Regeneration Limited hits a similar problem as it did in the JAG scheme and needs extra support. Having committed all the one-off surpluses to other projects, we would, in this example, put that at risk, therefore our long-term income stream, and it would have a massive impact onto the medium-term financial strategy. Finally, we must remember in this, with these surpluses, it's in the gift of Cabinet, not full council, to allocate them. So whilst it would be easy for me to grab attention and perhaps mention projects like improving our CCTV capability tonight, it would be until December Cabinet, later in the year, that we could have any certainty that any plans would be finalised. Equally, Cabinet could decide that instead of spending lots of small one-off spends to improve Thurrock, we could undertake one big project maybe over a few years that would require massive investment and have an equally massive impact on the borough. So now the bit that always annoys me, and I'm sure it annoys other members, is the envelope setting. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do not believe setting a budget envelope is setting budget. A budget is not just an amount on a vague heading, it should be outlining what you'll be doing to deliver for that amount. However, legislation is very clear, only the Cabinet have the powers to decide exactly where that money is spent, so I will refer you to the envelope at page 98, paragraph 5.5. That will outline the overall budget envelope. However, you will see in Appendix 3 an outline of the indicative budget for all of those areas. So, where are the cuts, I hear you ask? Well, there are no cuts in this budget. Again, only efficiency savings. Whilst efficiency savings always bring a titter, let's be very clear what the difference between a cut and an efficiency saving is. A cut is where you take a service, reduce the spend, or cut it completely, and remove part or all of that service. And I'll give you an example. The street cleaning service was slashed to next to nothing in 15-16. An efficiency saving, however, is where you make improvements to the efficiency or model of supply and resultant savings are taken from that budget. As example, Councillor Howland's remodelling of the children's centres, moving some of them away from fixed buildings and supplying those services direct to individuals has saved £400,000 and has seen a 25% increase in residents receiving the service. It would also be wrong for any public body not to look at being more efficient, to look at different methods and models of delivering service to supply the statutory requirements and not just carry out what we've been doing year on year because, well, we've always done it like that. That's not acceptable. And these examples, as we look through this budget, We're transforming the way that adoptions are being undertaken. We're brought back in-house, and that gives us better outcomes, not only in the form of a saving, but also for those children that are adopted. We can adopt more of them. Adopting more children means there is less pressure on other parts of the children's services budget. And that's done with increasing the staff, but even with the increase in staff, there is still a saving. Now, doing this across the whole of the children's services, as you'll see on page 97, at 5.3, we've identified nearly £3 million worth of potential savings. However, we've only allocated just over 800,000 reduction, so that's per particular service, with the remaining £2 million being put towards resilience within there for unexpected growth within the service, and indeed to increase the availability of funding across that whole department. So it just doesn't disappear, it just gets spread more evenly where it's needed. So yet again, despite the amount of taxpayers' money being allocated to us by central government being reduced by 7.3%, no cuts, and on top of that we're proposing, as we did last year, a below maximum council tax increase. Not just below, way below. So I'm sure you all read, we are proposing a 0% increase in the council's portion of the council tax this year. And why is that? Well, quite frankly, I think it's clear from the budget papers and Councillor Hebb's previous report. Balanced budget not only for this year, but for the 3 future years. Not only a balanced budget but as mentioned repeatedly, one-off services year on year. Asking Thurrock residents for more money this year out of their pockets when we've achieved this would be wrong. It would be very wrong. We could have asked for a further 2.99%, which is about £38 on the average Band D property. But why would we when we can demonstrate that we don't need this increase? It would be unfair on everyone. So that means this year the only council tax increase we'll see is through the precepts from the Police and Fire Crime Commissioner. So as we will see, every copper coin that comes out of residents' bank balances this year for council tax will be going towards coppers on the streets, something no other council in Essex can boast. So yet again, I've demonstrated that instead of spending time bemoaning that the government isn't giving councils the money they want to spend, that we've got on with making efficiencies, raising the money ourselves, and as Councillor Head pointed out, next year 20% of our budget will be from money that we raise through commerciality and investments, and that strategy is delivering. And that we're determined to review every single service and drive out every single efficiency and commercial possibility to protect the services for residents. This shows this administration is committed to supplying the services residents want to see. As said, like cleaning the streets, filling the potholes, weekly bin collections, protecting verges, tackling antisocial behaviour and supporting those with mental health issues. But not only supporting our residents, but also supporting our partners, for instance in the NHS. We've already invested £1 million into the design and initial stages of delivering the Integrated Medical Centre in Tilbury, and that's the start of one of 4 across the whole of the borough. By putting in high quality bids to government and SELEC and working closely with our MPs, whilst applying for those grants and growth and regeneration, it's been successful in brought in vast amounts of capital to help improve the long-needed infrastructure that is long overdue in Thurrock. You'll see from Appendix 7, page 129, £46.5 million coming from government for the long overdue east-facing slips from Lakeside. For that, an extra investment of 1/10 of that from Thurrock Council will give the relief that it's 30 years overdue. You'll also note a significant difference in the potential capital spend for the Thames side. These upper and lower estimates are based on 2 possibilities of either a refurbishment of the current provision, all the way up to having to build a whole new theatre provision. We will, of course, await the long overdue options for this in the coming financial year before we can finally make a decision on that. There are, as we will see, 22.5 other operational capital requirements that we're asking for approval of. So, in closing, my conclusion, it's Council is seeking a 0% council tax increase, an overall spending envelope of £111.69 million from the Council Tax General Fund, £10.3 million for capital for major schemes, 22.5 operational capital, with a further 5 to 30 million over 3 years for the improvement of Thameside Theatre, depending on, as said, the finally agreed model. For that, Madam Mayor, I move the report.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Kane, you have 15 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I can promise that I won't take anything like 15 minutes. Can I start by welcoming, quite genuinely, much of the budget we have before us this evening. The idea of using borrowing and using some of the money we have put away to make sensible investments was one that was started by the previous Labour administration. In fact, if we look at investments that we made, such as investing money with CCLA, that has now reached £10 million since we started. Other investments have raised roughly £3 million since we started. If we look at Labour's policy of debt restructuring, that has now amounted to £30 million worth of savings that have either gone into reserves or helped to prop up services. So I'm not going to be in any way churlish at saying that I'm glad that the current administration has continued with that policy. I'm also glad to see that council tax here is recommended to be frozen, having battered people with a 10% increase in council tax over 2 years. People deserve a break. I would just remind everybody that during the last Labour administration we froze council tax 3 times and actually managed to reduce it once. There is a caveat, there is a... Councillor Clegg, you'll find, why is that amusing? You'll remember it, Rob. I think
Councillors, can you please give Councillor John Kemp the opportunity to present his report, as we have done the same for Councillor Clegg. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, you're too protective. I took that as being supportive, not anything else. I promise you. There is, of course, a caveat with the council tax freeze, and the same as any sensible member of this chamber this evening, I read the Section 151 officer's report very closely before I decided whether or not I'd be able to support the council tax freeze. And he is very, very clear that this is pretty near the bone, that this is a kind of fine judgment call, that it does rely on those savings, those efficiencies being delivered, as yet unidentified, but they have to be delivered. The members and officers have to be on their mettle to make sure that happens. So I think we all need to be quite clear on that. Councillor Behaviour was quite right, of course, when he said that one of the things that we'd all like to discuss tonight, and we'd all like to be able to make decisions on tonight, is what we do with a surplus. That won't happen until December. But what I would like to do is just to say what a Labour administration's priorities would be with that surplus. And the first would be around homelessness. We know that in this financial year so far, there are now in excess of 800 families that come to this council in fear of losing their homes. We know, because we get it in our casework, we get it in our surgeries, we are housing Thurrock residents in caravans on Canby Island, as far afield as Maidstone, Kettering. We are sending dozens of families down to Southend. Madam Mayor, I think that is a scandal that has to stop. And I think the bulk of the surplus that we have, somewhere in the region of £2.5 to £3 million, should be used buying properties in Thurrock for Thurrock's homeless. I then come to fuel poverty. Madam Mayor, we have seen in the last couple of weeks EDF Energy, E.ON, Npower, British Gas all announced that they're putting their gas and electricity tariffs up by 10%. Fuel poverty in Thurrock is a real issue. I believe that we should be putting forward a pot of money in the region of £750,000 as a one-off pot to help deal with the effects of fuel poverty here in Thurrock. And thirdly, Madam Mayor, we all sit in surgeries, we all get the same issues coming to us time and time again. One of the issues we get more than any is on the cleanliness of the borough. It's those bits of unregistered land. It's back alleyways where the council says we will not clear it if it's not our land. We have a surplus that would allow us to put some money to one side to do what residents want us to do and to clear that rubbish for them. So I would suggest that we put somewhere in the region of £250,000 to one side for that purpose. Finally, I come back to the police. I can't be hypocritical. I've stood here and bemoaned the lack of police. The administration has taken some action, it's taken some money out of that surplus as a one-off to fund extra police. I support that. I would support it being taken out of next year's surplus as well, and surplus the year after. The difficulty, though, is if you carry on funding it as a one-off, it becomes, to all intents and purposes, part of a mainstream service. I think the challenge is for this council to decide whether it actually wants to permanently find mainstream funding for an element of policing, or whether it wants to continue to do it as a one-off. I don't think that's a debate for this evening, but I put it out there. We need some clarity. We need to make a decision on it. So in closing, Madam Mayor, this is a budget, but I hope the debate will be brief. I hope the debate will be collegiate. We will be supporting the council tax freeze and therefore supporting everything that flows from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jedwell, you have 10 minutes to respond to Councillor John Kent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I will not be taking the full 10 minutes. I will, as Councillor Kent suggested, be keeping this brief, and I hope everybody else does too. I welcome your welcoming on that, Councillor Kent. It's always good to see that we do get it right. Hopefully it will be passed, this whole budget will be passed this evening, and again, I welcome your support on that. I just not so much correct, but bring to attention everyone's the full story about the 10% increase. Can't forget 6% of that was for adult social care. So this is 6% of that going to those that are most vulnerable in our society that we need to support. And we're going to hear a bit later on from Councillor Duncan in relation to his motion, which I will be supporting, about how government changes its mind. So where we've always said, oh, government needs to pay for this, government needs to pay for this come out of central ordinary taxation, that's really great, but let's face it, government will change its mind when it feels like it. Another mandarin will come up with a better idea and it will put forward, it will be floated, go through consultation and end up with winners and losers. Sometimes Thurrock wins, sometimes they lose. Now we move to the increase of 0% that, under your previous administration. Again, you forget to mention they were propped up by extra support from central government. So the taxpayer paid it through the back door. And I think the one reduction that we're talking about was actually forced by one of your members, and it was a pittance of pennies.
That's 2 reductions, you're right.
Oh, sorry, yes. I forgot the reduction that we forced upon you. Because, after you wanted to cut the bin collections to fortnightly, Councillor Hague was leader at the time, quite rightly led for a 0.25% reduction. How could we ever forget that? But moving on to what you said about the one-off values, I'm sure it won't come as a surprise that actually a lot of the things you've mentioned are things that we all agree across the chamber. The homelessness support, shipping people out of the borough, and I've had not only residents be, when I say victim of this, have to do this because there's no alternative to housing within the borough. It isn't right, it isn't fair on them, and it does cause problems. But equally, those people that have come from other boroughs, when their homelessness period of support is up, that borough needs to be taking them back to wherever they may come from, invariably in London. But I do support what you're saying. It would be right to buy properties that are already existing. Should we build new properties specifically for homelessness support? My personal view is the second rather than the former, but ultimately the outcome will probably be exactly the same. The fuel poverty. We also, as you can fully appreciate, have these inquiries from our residents. There is something that we're doing about it. I cannot actually tell you tonight because it's in the final stages of hopefully agreement, but it is a different way. So whilst I understand where your sentiments come from there, Councillor Kent, it's not something specifically that we could probably accommodate, but I'm not saying that we wouldn't do so if necessary. Now we move on to this issue of back alleyways. Now you said this is unregistered land. Invariably, and I know what it's like with being a former property owner myself, the alleyway at the back is part of your deeds and it says that you're responsible for exports for this, with the exception of X, Y and Z and various other little caveats. So invariably, these, and I say invariably, not all the time, these are part of residents' properties. They just don't form part of the boundary fence, it's the access to the rear. If we clean it once, we're going to end up cleaning it every time. Which is not what we should be doing, because this gets on to your last point. When should we put this into regular income and regular expenditure? I think not. Far from it. I think what we should be doing is making very clear to all residents that they have a responsibility to look after their own back alleyways and their own responsibilities, and to get it cleared up. However, where it is unregistered and we're not sure, then we do need to take action. So again, there may well be some scope to accommodate some of that idea as we go through in December. I also agree in principle what you say about the policing. Should we be having a discussion about having this is a continual support for part of the council tax that we ask residents for. We already do that through the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner's precepts, and I think that's the way we should continue to do it. This is a 3-year project. At the point of having a 3-year project is to see not only will it make a difference, but should it continue? If not, we can disband that group. The police have a full understanding it's only a 3-year contract. But if we feel that at the end of that we're getting much, much more benefit than just the cash that we're paying for it, then I think that's the time we should be having that discussion. I don't mean 5 minutes to the 3-year end period. I do mean having a meaningful discussion and a meaningful vote long before that. So that, Madam Mayor, I do hope the rest of the Chamber agree with the budget and agree with it accordingly.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to speak? We first of all have Councillor Duffin.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I just want to welcome the 0%. I've been on that bandwagon ever since elected. I'm one of the few councillors that's never voted for a council tax rise in this chamber, which I'm very proud of. There's a disappointment of how we got there. Obviously, there were some positive steps going forward in investment. It needs to go a lot further, because if we're able to purely cover council tax freezes and cuts by investments, it's a much better strategy than relying on the reduction of a certain department coming the right way through efficiency savings or which other metric they arrive. There's just one amendment to these recommendations I think it's important this chamber makes, and that's the 1.2. I think it either needs to say something about general fund council tax or the council's part of council tax, because the message that's been sent is people are getting council tax freeze, which is factually incorrect. They're not getting a council tax freeze, it's going to go up, and so we shouldn't be sending that false message.
We now move on to Councillor Cherry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to talk about, if there's a surplus, how I'd like some of that money spent. Now, very briefly, we launched Neighbourhood Watch in November on Little Thurrock Rectory Ward. We had a fantastic turnout. We had a recent meeting on the 6th of February, a fantastic turnout where my fellow councillors were invited and the police. Now, Neighbourhood Watch has really taken off well in Little Thurrock. It's just been recently launched in Tilbury and Chapel St Mary. Fantastic take-ups there too. And why I want to discuss Neighbourhood Watch and any surplus is, and I also want to mention is Neighbourhood Watch that with Keith Harrington organised the 2 recent litter picks in the 2 last Sundays, where we got tons and tons of rubbish out. A fantastic community effort. It's Neighbourhood Watch, working with residents. The communication there, we're using WhatsApp so we can communicate this, and we're building up this sense of community as well as preventing crime with Neighbourhood Watch. And another quick example of how Neighbourhood Watch has worked today is a burglary was prevented in the Willows, where a person was seen going over the fence, they smashed the window to break in and challenged, and we've got some good intel of the suspects involved. And that was quickly communicated out to the rest of the Thurrock Rectory Ward by WhatsApp. A fantastic example of how it works. But the shame is that Thurrock Neighbourhood Watch is run by Roger Pasfield, who puts an incredible amount of hours in each week to support Neighbourhood Watch across Thurrock. Have a meeting with yourself and say, do you understand? Regards Neighbourhood Watch and funding. And all we've been offered, if it's correct to say, is £1,000. Now, £1,000 doesn't go anywhere across Thurrock. I need signs for all the streets that I've got signed up in Little Thurrock Rectory Ward. Tilbury are going to need the signs. Chapel St Mary are going to need the signs. We need the stickers. Now, it is already working very, very well, but it can work better if it's properly funded. And I'll say £1,000 won't go very far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to give my congratulations to Councillor Head and the officer team. Your hard work in turning the council's financial income around from a fiscal disaster, I remember the graph of doom, to a budget that is balanced for the next 12 years is an achievement that no other councils can only envy. Councillor Head has set the bar high for other councils and administrations to follow. It is therefore fitting that it's a Conservative administration that should allow the residents of Thurrock to share in the fruits of our success with a freeze in the 2019-20 General Council tax, without a cut in services. In their 6 years as an administration, the Labour group never came close to achieving anything like this success. And that, I guess, defines the difference between conservatism and socialism. The Conservative ambition for the people of Thurrock is self-funded growth, prosperity and opportunity. Not better swayed on text. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Geary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'd like to say, first of all, that I am very pleased to see a council tax freeze being offered to residents this evening. But I also have to say that when I first read the budget proposals, it struck me that this is very much a budget that relies on smoke and mirrors. It's exactly the kind of budget, in fact, that we'd expect, and perhaps as Councillor Collins suggested there, it's exactly the kind of budget that we'd expect from an administration that's increased council tax by 10% in 2 years and then tries to say that they're doing people a favour by not increasing that further. It's the same logic that cuts hundreds of police officers across Essex, adds back a few, and then tries to claim a victory when even police officers are saying they do not have enough resources to keep Essex safe. So, Madam Mayor, it's a conjuring trick based on the belief that people will have forgotten the huge Tory tax hikes in the last 2 years, something that we voted against and something that Labour never did while in office. The other reason I call this a smoke and mirrors budget is that it covers up the fact there is no new money to pay for this freeze. Their own medium-term financial strategy shows that whereas we were previously in surplus for the next 5 years, we've now opened up a £1.8 million deficit. There is no new investment, no new commercial income stream, no new innovative approach to finance. They are simply borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today. There is no plan, Madam Mayor, in this budget on how we close that gap. The Section 151 officer has made clear that this is not a sustainable approach, and if it happens again, he may no longer be in a position to sign off our budgets. We all agree that we should keep council tax as low as possible for residents, but to achieve that, we need to generate other income, to push forward with more dynamic investment strategies, and to supercharge Thurrock Regeneration Limited. We cannot simply pay for the freeze with wishful thinking. Now, we as members have to take a balanced view of these proposals on council tax. Because residents have seen such big increases over the last 2 years, I believe it is critical that we give them some breathing room now. We do have the assurances we need that the budget is balanced for this year, and so I will be voting in favour of freezing council tax. But let's be clear as well that the council cannot simply go on like this. Smoke and mirrors are not a strategy. Unfunded freezes cannot be sustained in the long term. The administration and indeed the council needs to genuinely tackle those big financial questions about our long-term approach, and we need to start now. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hewley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I sat here in my first year as a councillor under a Labour administration who spent every month holding up a graph of doom. And at the end of the year, I stood up and held up a picture of a leaking bucket because they were letting money just slip through the cracks. Not only has this Conservative administration plugged the holes in the bucket and balanced the books, but it's increased the rainy day money in case the roof leaks. Spending more on services and less on old buildings is the right thing to do. We have a whopping 70% of council services now performing within target. That's more than a 20% improvement of services compared to the previous administration. We have Thurrock staff and Conservative councillors winning awards for excellence. We have secured £4.3 million community locally led development fund for Tilbury. We have no cuts to library services. We've improved and added to our bus routes. We've secured extra police officers, and we have 3,500 new school places and 4 new medical centres on the way. We have cleaned, cut and filled and continue to clean, cut and fill. As I said, the books are balanced and I couldn't ask for a much better end to my term as a councillor. I'm so very proud to be part of this Conservative councillor team and all the officers that have worked so hard to achieve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spillman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's going to be a budget that passes. When the budget passes easy, because I think we all realise that the cost of living has got to such a full place for a lot of people that we can't just keep piling on more misery. I don't know how you managed it, but you kept so much reined in tax and spend head, which is very good of you. It's not just about the cost of living for individual households. Many of them are working or living on the breadline. It's also about money in people's pockets that they can spend in local businesses. I've got deep concerns about the state of the retail sector in Thurrock outside of the lakeside area, and we need to have more money supporting our local businesses. Now, my concern with the efficiency savings is that they are the largest efficiency savings seem to be in children's services, and I'm slightly worried that the savings that are on record are aspirational, rather than, and they could be achieved. But I mean, if you read the papers that came to CSR, it's about reducing the amount of children in care. We'd all like to do that. It's about reducing the amount of time that children are in care. We'd all like to do that. But circumstances can change that mean that those things aren't achieved, and that's a concern to me. It's not a concern. I mean, I'm going to take the assurances I've been given in good faith by officers that it is achievable. But it's a concern that I hope that you're very mindful of and monitor throughout the period. Also, the reducing agency staff. I mean, how many times have we heard that one? How many more times will we hear it? Yet to say, oh, agency staff have gone up. So I hope that doesn't happen in this instance. In terms of surplus, I've been, and I support the comments made by the Leader of the Opposition about homelessness. In terms of the Thurrock Regeneration Limited and the surplus we have, I've put forward ideas about building temporary housing in Thurrock on several occasions. I think it's needed. I think that officers understand the need. I think members understand the need, but we're not seeing any movement on it. We cannot keep on housing people, housing people outside the borough anymore. It is, in the cases I see regularly, there's no other term for it other than social cleansing. It's what it is. Yeah. When you move people, poor people on very limited means, outside your borough and dump them on other boroughs.
Councillor Spillman, that's 3 minutes. And thank you.
That's what it is. Can we please see action?
We're going to move on. Thank you very much. Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think all councillors in the chamber would agree that they would all like to see the council run on a more commercial basis in terms of investment and seeing a great return on that investment made. I can't understand why council didn't consider buying Grays Town Centre when it was up for sale. Now I understand that makes £1 million profit per year, and it was £20 million buying up. So effectively, in 20 years, that would have been paid for. I would have thought that would have been a great investment. And we should be looking at generating great investments, which effectively will earn us extra money to pay for more much-needed services. In fact, seeing a decrease in our council tax perhaps. Councillor Behaviour, why didn't we buy Grays Town Centre?
We're not taking questions at the moment, but I'm going to move on to the next person. The next person that wants to speak, and that's Councillor Cathy Kemp. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to focus on the street services, if I may. You said, Councillor Gledhill, that the service that you wanted to provide services residents want to see, such as cleaner streets. But the residents, particularly in Greystoke and in other wards similarly structured to Greystoke, would like to see some action taken in regards to the fly tipping that's happening in alleyways. It's fly tipping that they've not put there, other people doing it to blight where they live and to blight their community. I was very disappointed when you alleged to say that you would not be clearing these up. I would like you could reconsider this decision and look at all cases on its own merits and hopefully find some money to put into cleaning the alleyways in Thurrock to make it a cleaner and better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pothecary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I broadly support the budget. I'm glad to see those investments that we made whilst in administration are paying off. I am slightly, I do take Councillor Gertill's point about this being a budget envelope. It does sort of depress me slightly that we're only talking about doing things and making things happen in December, which feels like a very, very long way away. Personally, I'm someone who just loves to make sure we get stuff done. So here is what I'm looking for in terms of what the council's priorities should be, and I think it is a greater focus on what really matters to our residents and what really affects the quality of their lives. As a council, there are some big areas where we are just quite frankly failing to live up to residents' expectations, and specifically we are not doing enough. As Councillor Cathy Kent has just said, we're not doing enough to tackle the blight that is fly tipping, particularly in back alleyways and other communal spaces. These folks are not big landowners, you know, they're individual residents who are struggling to get unregistered land cleared behind them. They don't deserve this, and we need to actually find a sustainable solution on this one. We're also failing to house our homeless and haven't invested in buying properties to stem the ever-increasing tide of our residents who just don't have a decent roof over their heads. One issue that hasn't been mentioned yet tonight is congestion and air pollution, which are two issues that really blight the lives of our residents. We've seen COPD, asthma and respiratory illnesses claiming and ruining lives in our borough day in and day out, and I don't get the sense that the council has any real plan or idea of how to tackle that. We need to actually start grasping the nettle on a lot of these issues rather than just saying, yes, we know it's an issue. As a council, we need to actually start getting some solutions that actually make our residents' lives materially better.
Thank you. Councillor Redsill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't actually going to say anything, but I'd like to applaud Councillor Cherry for doing something with Neighbourhood Watch, but as for coming to the council for everything, I think that's actually wrong. In Blackshots, Little Thurrock, we actually fund, as Friends of Blackshots, we do many, many things on that field. All the things that are on there at the moment wouldn't be there without the councillors raising the money and funding for it. So I think that's another way that all councillors in their ward should work. There is money out there, lots of money, and I think perhaps Councillor Cherry ought to look at funding for those signs rather than coming to the council. Thank you.
Councillor Gerard Price.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, of course, one would support the budget. I think our hard-pressed taxpayers of this borough have undergone 10% in the last 2 years, and as we've heard, everything is increasing. So 10% and 0 this year averages out at about 3% per annum. So we can see it's good, but what we do need, and I think Councillor Kent has touched on it, is some action on the homelessness. Now, last year we spent £27 billion paying private landlords to actually house homeless people. That's the unacceptable face of conservatism. And let us just look at the police. It is welcome that we're going to spend some of our money, but we can't let the Tories off. Since 2010, they've reduced the police on our streets by 22,000 officers. That is significant. And what has that done? I can imagine every member in this room this evening hears reports of windscreens being smashed, unacceptable behaviour by whether they're young people, old people, the populace within our streets. Not everyone, but we have an unruly element. Why? Because this government through their stinginess, and the police rightfully say this, they are near the end of their tether. Yes, we're going to get a few extra police officers, but does it take care of the 22,000 that we got rid of? And I'll just remind one further thing, Madam Mayor. When I was chairman of the police authority back in '93, we had an establishment then of 3,000 police officers. Today it's 2,850. Something radically has gone wrong in 25 years. You cannot allow a Conservative government to actually get away with this, and that's why people are turning to Neighbourhood Watch. Because we go to our forums, and yes, we do see occasionally police officers attend, which is good, but we don't see police walking the beats. When you take 22,000 police officers off the streets, you're inviting crime, and that's what you have done, and I think it's a disgrace.
Thank you. Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a budget that we should be proud of. 3 years ago, we inherited a council that defined itself by the graph of doom, claiming there was so little money left, only nasty cocktails of tax hikes and spending cuts could keep the council going. Today, we've got a council with a 5-year balanced budget, a council working with governments to deliver a capital plan of almost £500 million, and a council freezing tax that may very well finance Councillor Gary's buying a necktie. And how do we achieve this? Because we've changed the culture of this council. 3 years ago, Councillor Hebb said, instead of focusing on the malaise of so-called austerity, we would save more than we needed to so we could increase reserves and in fact further safeguard public services. The rainy day fund is up 38%, even though we are taxing less than 95% of other councils. That's not anything that we should be downbeat about. In fact, I think, quite frankly, Councillor Hebb should write down what he and his team have done and market it as Hebbonomics. Councillor Conchal focused on giving love to neglected areas like Grays and Tilbury with bold new master plans with 3,500 new school places on the way, 4 new medical centres and the ambition for more. We're a borough that is investing truly in everyone's future and everyone's community. Councillor Watkins took clean it, cut it, fill it to a step further when he said think for 5 and made the Keep Britain Tidy scores a steep ambition for the department, but one that they were absolutely determined to hit. And we're also doing other things in the environment, like expanding the civic amenity site. Truly the only tip in Thurrock that's actually worth anything. Yeah. This is a budget that other councils envy. Essex County Council, an authority 14 times bigger than us, recently bragged that they're putting £1 million extra into child and adult mental health. Well, we're putting almost £1 million extra just into child mental health alone. Never again will mental health be the neglected little brother of physical health, and never again will mental health issues be ignored by people. They bragged, Essex, an additional £500,000 to tackle gangs, while this little unitary is putting over £1 million into working with the police. Not only will we have 24 new officers on the streets, more than any other Essex borough, but we've also worked with the police to secure 11 injunctions against youth gangs in an effort spearheaded by the leader. Thurrock, with a more optimistic attitude, is turning heads and punching above our weight. With budget stability and confidence, we're looking boldly to the future. We're drawing up plans to turn the Thurrock Community Hospital into the resource that our community deserves, a proper urgent care centre, expanded parking and so on, and bringing forward plans to fully integrate mental health into the integrated medical centre programme that we will expand. And Councillor Johnson is building for the next generation. In addition to the 1,000 new homes on council brownfield land, he will soon be announcing a new council house building scheme to go alongside the skills summit that we will host to ensure that our young people can access the jobs of the future.
Thank you, Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Can I just ask for a clarification there? You said we've got a 5-year balanced budget, but according to the graph on page 99, that says it's factually incorrect. Is there different information that is available to him that isn't available to the rest of us members?
Sorry, Councillor, I actually meant 6 years if you include the years we've already been in power.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Howden. I'm now going to move on Councillor Watkins.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and members. I think one of the striking things from tonight, I mean, this is my third budget council and first time that we as all members can actually talk about delivering the surplus and how that surplus is going to be spent. Everyone's got their own views on how that should be done, but I think that's very welcome in the fact that due to the Conservatives' work in council, in control for the last 2.5 years, but we can actually have this discussion tonight. Madam Mayor, Thurrock, under the Conservatives, has continued to see investments and none more so in the Environment and Highways Department. If it wasn't for the economic work Conservatives have done, we wouldn't be currently repairing curbs, grass verges and giving residents vital parking requirements in places like Ockenden, Tilbury and Aveley under the surplus. But we also wouldn't be investing in further fencing, new bollards and target hardening in the continued fight against fly tipping. Over the past 2 years, millions has gone back into the department to ensure that clean and classic filling not only continues and improves, but also evolves. We will be able to ensure that roads continue to be resurfaced at the rate they have and potholes continue to be filled again at the same rate. We all remember what it was like a few years ago. Madam Mayor, fiscal prudence, investment and continued hard work ensures that we see enforcement officers patrol the streets, again something which was happening a few years ago. A team I would add that has grown and continues to grow. It means that barrow beats can also remain on the streets, continually increase cleaning in our streets and towns. It means that weekly bin collections continue. It also means that local bus services needed by residents from Purfleet to Horndon to Bourbon and Bobbin remain, and not just for ad hoc times or 1 year here or a few months here, but for multiple years. I actually got a card, Madam Mayor, from a resident in Bourbon this week. It was a very touching card, thanking me, saying that the bus service was her lifeline and that she's grateful for us ensuring that it stays. And it was a lovely card, and if she's listening or reads the minutes, I'd just like to say thank you to her for that card. This year, and thanks to fiscal work, also, it's already been mentioned, but colleagues were able to announce some amazing new schemes. Life Ladder was launched as a councillor head. Councillor Horden was able to launch the mental health team, working across schools with school children. Councillor Glethill was able to announce that areas, obviously Thurrock Council will be working with the police is using again the surplus to invest in additional police officers on top of the work that Roger Hurst has already been doing. Madam Mayor, this is just a small number of things across the entire council which is possible thanks to the council's fiscal work. And I would just like to add, I don't really want to get into political discussions, but obviously certain members from the right-hand side of the chamber have been making comments about tax and stuff. I find it very interesting they say that, considering the party they support and the leader of that party, and he steers towards communism and Marxism, will do nothing but undoubtedly damage to this country. Perhaps maybe you should speak to the recent defectors who moved over to Thurrock to the independent group in Parliament. They defect away normally, who have obviously moved to the new independent group in Parliament, who have no trust in the leader. And obviously Mike Burgess said, who was a lifelong Labour supporter.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. 2 minutes is now moving on to Councillor Head.
You sure that wasn't 2.5 then? Madam Mayor, the Thurrock Council economy is strong. This administration committed to doing things differently, head, heart and soul, by embarking on a long-term self-sufficiency objective, so that we don't have to go year on year wondering how we pay for the next. We commenced our administration by abolishing the budget review panel and replacing it with the council spending review, a move from top-down cuts to bottom-up service review. We initiated more savings to build up our rainy day fund from a suboptimal £8 million up to 9 million, up to 9.26 and up to 11 million now. We also embarked on our self-sufficiency plan. And the success of that is that the services that residents use and depend on are protected for 4 years and well into the next decade. And it is not just, it's high time we take a look at what Thurrock is doing better and different than other councils across the United Kingdom. And I don't say that just as one council of the 5% who aren't raising tax. How all of us on this side of the chamber have made a mission of building a Thurrock that people can get behind rather than run down. A place where people want to come rather than move away from. And our policies have led to a 0% increase, hopefully being passed tonight. And how have we done that? We see councils across the land demanding more money from Her Majesty's government, citing that local government is operating in a challenging environment. Thurrock is not in that position. We see councils across the land demanding more money, lacking the will to genuinely reform. Thurrock is not in that position. We see councils who struggle to put together a balanced budget for 1 year. Thurrock is not in that position. We see councils across the land drawing on reserves to stay afloat. Thurrock is not in that position.
Indeed, Madam Mayor, a child born on the first day of our administration will be 6 going on 7 in their second year of early years schooling before this council doesn't have a balanced budget. Madam Mayor, I want to move to the member for West Thurrock and South Stiford who remarks upon the Labour legacy. We know what the legacy was. Yeah, we know what the legacy was. There was a 30 million gap in the medium-term financial strategy. There was only ever 1 year's worth of balance. Suboptimal reserve levels. Top-down cuts, ideologically driven rather than genuine reform. Environment and grass-cutting services cut to the bone. Cuts that have conveniently tonight been forgotten in terms of the PCSO numbers that this council used to fund. Libraries either closed down or moved across the borough. Multi-million deficits in the social care sector, a deficit of school places for primary school emerging into secondary. Tilbury ignored, litter everywhere, car parks sold, inflicting lifelong damage to our valued small businesses. Madam Mayor, we know what the legacy is, and when the opposition party cites that they didn't put tax up by, or whatever, you know, they froze tax consistently, we must remember it was the Right Honourable Sir Eric Pickles now who actually led that policy as a Conservative government, and the last time the Labour administration were in under a Labour government, the tax went up in this borough by 48% over 4 years, rather than the 10% that everything's over there. Madam Mayor, please to obviously support.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm just going to touch on 2 really important points which are from tonight. It's actually the homes issue. I'm very glad the opposition we can actually see that homes are the most important thing, that we need to actually start building homes. We start to need to build council homes, start building low-cost homes to sell as well as to rent, to make sure of that budget, that deficit, that helps out the economy of the United Kingdom, as well as especially the people of Thurrock. So I really want them words, what they've said in one words, to be thinking about that as they move into the next year in July and through the local plan. So the next stage of the local plan, we can actually do that and deliver that. Some really sensible conversations about what these homes are, how we deliver homes, and we don't get into a fight then. And let's make sure that we get 49 councillors moving forward, or 48, I don't expect one to vote for it, last night. So we really do need to just move forward with it and make sure that we get that. And there's some actually good, the starting of a legacy there is coming now. With so the HRA budget from the last of the Conservative government's been lifted, so we can now actually lift the cap of that. We've got TRL now to actually deliver that. We're finally identifying sites that we own here to start that legacy off. But we do need the councillors here in this chamber to move forward when we go past the next stage of the local plan, to have some real serious, honest conversations with each other and not try and throw mud at each other at general election times about it. Because if we got all here today to deliver that, we can only deliver that as one voice, to deliver that and deliver new council homes. And I've been saying it before, look, the Conservative administration in the 1950s delivered 3 million homes in less than 6 years. Well, we can do that here and start and show, like we showed tonight, showing the Essex County Council that you can deliver a balanced budget, you can deliver something on a small scale, and we can work together, even in a minority administration. We never want to go back to Essex, we don't want to do anything like that, we've seen what they're doing, and we also then want to continue and deliver one step further and deliver the homes our people in Thurrock need.
Thank you very much. Councillor Worrell, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I start, can we just please clarify to Councillor Head that we didn't close any libraries. We haven't had any libraries closed. You said closures and we didn't.
Please don't talk across the chamber.
Right, Madam Mayor, if we listen to the budget, some of it sort of comes across tonight with them all patting themselves on their backs as usual, and that we're living in the land of milk and honey here in Thurrock. What we do have is last week I received a call on a Friday night that the church in Alsip Road opens on a Friday night to feed our homeless people and to clothe our homeless people. So it's not all good for everybody and we shouldn't. So I want to focus, and others have done, that we need to be focusing on housing and the homeless. So it's no surprise that we see the need for more HMOs across Thurrock, and I welcome that we will be increasing the number of these for our young people. I have been somewhat shocked over the last few months when I have heard of the conditions that we are allowing young people, including young mums, to live in. we use private landlords, or indeed some of our own partner organisations should be ashamed of themselves. So anything that we can do to increase HMOs must be a good thing. But we must go further and begin to tackle the wider problem of what we do with the housing waiting list and the growing number of homeless families here in Thurrock. 800 families presented to us last year. Madam Mayor, we need a plan. Simply changing the criteria of our housing waiting list does not make these residents disappear. It is not sustainable to send families, Thurrock families, all around the country and away from their family networks and close friends. We are paying other councils and private landlords hugely inflated rents, while the London boroughs are housing their residents here in Thurrock, using our vital services, including our school places and our health services. We do have Thurrock Regeneration Limited that we are not using to its full advantage. It has become stagnant. It is doing nothing. Whilst we will never be able to build enough of our own homes to tackle the whole problem, selling our assets to property developers with no conditions attached gives us a one-off payment and no longer return on our money. We must think about building council houses, buying homes and renting them out ourselves. Councillor Kent raised this in his budget surplus, backed by Councillor Spielman, backed by Councillor Gledill. Madam Mayor, what is stopping us from doing this? We have to do this. I also want to quickly touch on antisocial behaviour. I think it's great that we're increasing the amount of money that we spend on antisocial behaviour, and I welcome that. But it's not enough money in the budget to do the job that we need to do.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell.
I won't take any.
Yes, thank you very much. We now move on to Councillor Akinbowen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The problem I have about the budget is that my question is quite similar to Councillor Rice. Chapter 100 have increased problem of antisocial behaviour and crime, and so as everywhere in Thurrock. Do you think 1 million will be enough to solve this problem? Also, can we look for the cause of the problem? Because I went to unaccompanied refugee conference recently, and during the announcement or the teaching, we were told that refugees are being given £30 a week to manage, and that from that £30 they will have to eat, feed, and clothe themselves. So I began to look at why do we have a lot of crime around Thurrock. Could it be because they don't have enough money in their pocket? Could that be the reason why people go to Lakeside to steal stuff or to snatch bags from customers and all that? Could it be the reason why we have all this increased crime in Thurrock, because these refugees have no enough money in their pocket to spend?
Thank you. Finally, we have Councillor Fish. Last but not least, of course.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to add my voice to, along with Councillor Worrell and others that have spoken about homelessness. I have casework where I have people who have musical accompaniment.
That's why down in the bucket as you go out.
I have people on my casework who have mental health issues, are fleeing domestic abuse, also at the same time physical disabilities. Those people are having to wait for a year to be adequately housed. When they are housed, I say adequately, it's barely adequate. We need to do more for those people. We need to get that service working more quickly. And if we can build more homes in the borough for people in that situation, hopefully they'll be better housed as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hill, you now have 3 minutes to sum up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a point I really wish we'd had the extra 10 minutes on this one rather than after Councillor Kent. I'm going to cover as much as I possibly can. Councillor Cherry, you mentioned the Neighbourhood Watch funding. Yes, I've agreed for £1,000 for this financial year. That's the one we're in now. we've not made any decision for future funding. I'd just like to remind you the Police Fire and Crime Commissioner only gives 800, so it's 120% more than what's given by the Police Fire and Crime Commissioner, and I'm sure Councillor Redson will take this up at the next meeting with them. But yes, you've already got some sponsorship internally for the fantastic calendars, and hopefully get some more to help from outside bodies, but we will do what we can. Councillor Gerry's got smoke and mirrors. I remember using the exact same term. I think it's actually at the last budget that your administration put forward. Every budget put forward. Why use a new line when the old ones are still apt? But on this case, it isn't apt. Councillor Hooley made very clear what we are delivering. Not smoke and mirrors, but actual services on the ground and improvement. We also mentioned about children's services and the efficiency savings there. As I said, 1/3 of them is being applied. The other 2/3 are being spread to increase the spending power within that particular area of Councillor Spillman. Temporary housing, which has already been covered, and I think there is complete agreement across the whole of the chamber in relation to this. How we deliver it, different models, it's a different argument. Councillor Allen, the return on investments. We did look at the Grace Town Centre, but we decided after the first round of due diligence it wasn't for us, so we declined and looked at other investments which are paying off significantly. Councillor Cathy Kent, I've already covered the back alleyways. This is private areas. I know what it's like being a victim of this sort of crime. It's an annoyance, it costs the household the money, whether you can afford it or not afford it, it's an expense that nobody wants. But using taxpayers' money to just keep on clearing it up isn't the right way. We need to look at alternative. Councillor Bothkerry, we do know that Labour love to spend before they actually get the cash in. Let's face it, your government did it for a decade whilst in power. Councillor Rice, you mentioned the police numbers. We've got back to 3,000 in November. By the end of the next financial year, it'll be 3,200. So over and above when you would share of whatever it was you would share 100 years ago. Councillor Worrell again, we have tightened up the HMO.
Can we please have one person speaking?
We have increased the rules and regimes in relation to HMOs because a lot further to go. We had the problem when you were portfolio holder and I was portfolio holder, and now when Councillor Johnson is. This doesn't seem to go away, but we are really pushing this.
Councillor General, thank you for the summary. We will now move on to the voting for the recommendation in this report. Now, this is in a different format.
I do need to move the amendment, that's what I was trying to get to. On 1.2, as Councillor Duffy quite rightly suggested, it's agreed 0% council tax increase for the general fund. As we know, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner is putting up the only council tax increase, so it's coppers from people, coppers on the streets.
Okay, we'll come to that. Is that seconded? Yeah, thank you very much. Shall we take a vote on that? Are we all in agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. The voting this evening is slightly different, obviously, because it's the budget. So I'm going to invite the Chief Executive, who will now explain the voting process in relation to the budget and council tax settings. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's proposed tonight that we undertake the vote as follows. We'll firstly vote on recommendation 1.1, and that won't be recorded unless members indicate otherwise. We will take an individual recorded vote on recommendation 1.2. We will take individual votes on recommendations 1.3 and 1.4, and this will not be recorded, again, unless members indicate otherwise. And finally, we will vote on recommendations 1.5 to 1.10 en bloc, and this will be recorded.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to move to the vote. Recommendation 1.1. I will now conduct a non-recorded vote. Can members clearly indicate whether they are voting in favour of the recommendation? Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Are there any against? Any abstentions? The recommendation is carried. I now move on to recommendation 1.2 with the amendment. I will now ask Democratic Services to conduct the first recorded vote. Can members clearly indicate with their hands whether they are voting in favour of the recommendation? Please raise your hands.
It looks unanimous, mate.
Are there any voting against the recommendation? And are any members abstaining from the vote? The result is as follows. The vote is carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to recommendations 1.3 and 1.4. We will vote individually, and this will not be recorded unless members indicate otherwise. For recommendation 1.3, voted in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hands. Any members against? Any members abstaining? The vote is carried. I now move on to recommendation 1.4. Once again, those voting in favour, please raise your hands. Voting against the recommendation. Any abstentions? We're now moving on to recommendations 1.5 to 1.10, which will be taken en bloc. Recommendations will be en bloc. I'm going to ask Democratic Services to conduct a recorded vote. So those in favour of recommendations 1.5 to 1.10, please raise your hands. Are there any members voting against? Any abstentions? The recommendations are carried. Thank you very much indeed. That was an excellent piece of debate. And now we're going to move on to item 13. Questions for members to answer. Members to answer questions from members in the order that they were submitted. We've got 30 minutes allocated for this item, but please be brief with the questions and the answers so that we can get as many in as possible. Question 1 to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Maney. Can you please read out your question? And on page 133 of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The question reads, last year we saw some disturbing headlines that highlighted how street drinkers were dishonouring our war dead by drinking around Gray's War Memorial and generally behaving in an unacceptable manner. Can the Leader outline what action he has taken or will take to ensure this, to prevent this happening again? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gentile.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Maney, for your question. I, like the vast majority of residents, were sickened to see those Thurrock who fell dishonoured by a mindless few who clearly had no respect for those who fought and died to give them the freedom to do what they were doing. As you know, the 100-year anniversary of the First World War, the administration set aside $150,000 to clean up and enhance the memorials across the borough, and our main cenotaph at Grays was cleaned from top to bottom to become something befitting the fallen. So to have people use it as a toilet, as a place to pass out after too much drinking, or even to be used as an improper seating area to consume can after can and abuse the town centre users had to stop. So we took a two-pronged approach to tackle this. We erected fencing around the War Memorial flower beds to deter anyone using it as a promiscuous seating or sleeping area. The fencing not only aided as a physical deterrent, but also improved the overall look of the War Memorial. As you know, the designated public place order that it was, that former councillor Charlie Key fought so hard for in Grays, was put in place by this council, but from the day it was introduced, it was pretty much ignored. To be honest, it was viewed as a bit of a pointless exercise by residents, and the police had to focus on more serious crimes. We, as a council, did nothing. This led to many residents say they wouldn't go into Grays after 10 AM for fear of being abused or harassed by those clearly drunk in the high street. However, after 2 years of putting resources in to tackle this and litter issues, for a much tougher approach, the new Public Space Protection Order Zone seems to be working much better. Environment enforcement officers have been working in partnership with Essex Police to enforce the PSPO within the Grays Town Centre. This has resulted in a number of street drinkers were identified, appropriate action taken to remove them, and offers of help given to them to improve their lives. Ad hoc street drinkers can still be seen from time to time, and I'm sure as the weather improves, we may see a slow return of some of them. But both the police and enforcement officers have the powers to move on quickly, to issue fines, and eventually for banning orders to be put in place as happened last year. We cannot forget, Grays is our borough capital. We have a massive investment programme, public and private money going into Grays, and we wish to attract more and more developers and retailers to improve the high street, as Councillor Spillman pointed out earlier. And unless we make sure Grays is as safe and as clean as possible, this will not happen.
Councillor May, if you wish to pose a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, I do. I am, like most members, I'm sure, heartened by that response. Street drinking has been a problem raised for a very long time, and more recently there's been some focus on those who sell alcohol directly to street drinkers, many of whom are intoxicated when they buy the alcohol. I wondered if the leader could give an update on what the council is doing to tackle this.
Councillor Charities.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor May, for your second question. Last year there was an idea that the alcohol was being sold to those that were street drinking was being sold by irresponsible retailers in and around the high street. On investigation, it appeared that may not have actually been the case. It appears that an individual was buying this for as a third party and selling it then direct. Obviously, number one, in clear breach of licensing rules, but also just making the whole of that area much more susceptible to street drinkers, no doubt only to make a profit for themselves at the expense of every other taxpayer. But what we've also introduced, obviously as a council, is this. It's the Responsible Retailers Pack, and that will be given out to new retailers that will be selling either alcohol or other restricted items, and contains various posters and things like Think 25, don't buy cigarettes and alcohol for under 18s. This gives the retailers the ability to instantly set up shop and be responsible retailers. I understand that the person who was identified has now moved away, so hopefully this will not be a problem as we go into this municipal year.
Councillor May, if you wish to pose a second supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will briefly, if I might. The leader touched on regeneration in Grays, and really in posing this question, the wider issue of Grays and the decline of the town featured in my mind. Having been re-elected last year and being a councillor for a Grays seat, time and time again it comes up on the doorstep that local people regard the town as having seen its best days. Now the leader, as I said, mentioned regeneration, and I welcome that, but the reality is, although the council is formulating a regeneration plan and with government support, millions of pounds will likely be spent in the town, unless we do get outside investment, that will really count for little in the long term. So I wonder if the leader could just expand a bit more on what his administration is doing to bring in outside investment.
Councillor Cledio, can I remind you, I did ask for questions to be brief and answers to be brief, so that as many people that have taken the time to put questions forward can have their questions answered. Thank you very much. Councillor Cledio.
It will be brief, Madam Mayor. As I mentioned in my opening speech, we've got the new owners of the shopping mall looking to invest in Thurrock. We ourselves, along with government, £40 million for the new underpass, walk-through, whatever you wish to call it, new council offices to join the place from the college all the way through to the renewed courthouse. And we need to bring investments in by showing and leading by example, and that's something that we do with the regeneration of Grays. We've heard it time and time again, even since before I was a councillor, that Grays is good, Grays is bad. Grays needs to be better, it needs to change, and that's what we are aiming for. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cherry, do you wish to pose your question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Already we've had travellers arriving at the Haven in Chapel St Mary. There are many other such historically used sites in Shadwell and across the borough. I know what we can do after they arrive, but what is being physically done to prevent such land incursions this year, 2019, and what preparations are being put in place? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since taking this administration, we have been working hard through target hardening to reduce these incursions. That includes by putting in fencing, height restrictions, new padlock systems, raised curbs or indeed bunding. We've improved securing the locks on the gates with steel covers. As we all know, they seem to get miraculously cut hours before these incursions happen. We cannot obviously do that everywhere, so we have, as you can imagine, looked at our most visited areas, for want of a better term, and we are putting in place a number of physical measures to stop this from happening. I do have a list of those. I don't really want to give those out in public, for obvious reasons. We're quite glad to share them with you after the meeting or indeed next week. As an idea, £128,600 across the borough last year, with a further £77,000 being spent in the next 6 weeks target hardening alone. On the flip side of that, we're also still pursuing our High Court injunction. Fortunately, the London Borough of Bromley had to adjourn their case following further submission from others. And that was supposed to be heard on the 29th of February. That's now been delayed again. But once this is heard and the outcome is known, we will use our injunction, which as I understand is all ready to go. We're just using the time now for further information to make that even stronger. And the very second we can, we should put that through the High Court.
Councillor Cherry, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that. That's quite satisfying, really, because I've been working with the council officers to improve Chapel St Mary, and a lot of work has been done there. But in Chapel Hill, there's still rotten knee-high rails that could be easily broken if you sat on them quite hard. So if that could be looked at, the same with Thames Drive. And I've noticed that there's still a broken tree line at Blackshot Field, where we had a massive incursion. And I've seen tyre marks going through there recently. So that is still open, and I suggest that perhaps that could be looked at. But then I'd like you also to be able to approach every councillor on their wards and ask them directly about their wards and how their wards can be further improved regards to this particular subject before we have any more incursions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said, I can't actually go into any specific details in public, but you may gather from me pointing that out that some of these have already been thought about and will be addressed. We did actually ask all members through the injunction process to give us the experiences they've had, where they've had it, and I know a lot of members did actually take part in that, which we are grateful. And hopefully that will make an impact when it comes to getting the injunction. And yes, I think if the time needs to be, let's ask all members again. So I'll take that on board and make sure that that happens. I would actually ask, of course, it's not just members that see this, it's residents. And the very second they do see this is to call 101 and report it. That's elected members, all residents, call the police, give the information. It makes it much easier for them to use their section, their powers to move people off within hours, sometimes within 24 hours, rather than the weeks, 10 days it could take us under Section 77. Thank you.
Councillor Cherry, do you have a second supplementary?
Yes, a very brief one. I'm glad that you said you're going to consult my fellow councillors regards this and residents. But being a resident of Little Thurrock Ward, your own ward, sir, I've got a site there that I'd like to discuss with yourself or with the officers about target hardening. So perhaps I'll get some contact quite quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, Little Thurrock actually is one of the very few wards that has escaped incursions because there's not many places in which they can park up. I've got a fairly good idea what you may be talking about. And I've already approached officers in relation to that one. It's somewhat difficult to have that discussion. The bigger problem we have in the Thurrock Rectory is people buying land, building on it without permission, and also have to be travelling which I deal with planning. Thank you very much.
Councillor Lydiard, can you please read out your question? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question to Councillor Behaviour is, what can be done to remove the travellers in Fort Road next to the Anglian waste treatment site? They've been there for over a year, and despite several complaints into the council.
Councillor Behaviour.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies for this. I had a very, very late amendment to this, which I've had to type up. The issue is more complex to deal with one normal land ownership issue. It appeared originally that the land in question, the unauthorised account was taken place on, was looked after and maintained by the Tilbury Commoners. The Tilbury Commoners describe themselves as a statutory body with the jurisdiction of maintaining 148 acres of land in question. This has presented the Council with an unusual position. The Tilbury Commoners did give us permission to move the travellers off that land after discussions. However, it would appear when we've gone to serve the Section 77 notice to ask them to move on, that there may be a land ownership issue that needs to be resolved. Once that's resolved, there is the intention of serving the Section 77 notice by the Essex County Travelling Unit. If it does appear, as we fear, that it's actually passing to somebody else's land, then we'll be advising the owner that they might need to step forward and move these on.
Councillor Lydia, do you have a supplementary? No, thank you very much. Moving on to the next question, Councillor Maney to Councillor Gledhill. And can I just please make a note on this question that names and people cannot be identified through the question. Thank you very much. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the leader explain by what means the Council monitors members' attendance so as to ensure compliance with Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972, vacation of office by failure to attend meetings? Further, has the Council recently initiated investigations or proceedings in accordance with this provision?
Councillor Gledhill, please heed my warning.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, indeed, Councillor Maney. I shall heed your warning, but I need to say that the Section 85, open bracket 1, close bracket 2, the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, provides legislation for vacation of office if the elected member fails to attend a meeting of the Council or represents the Council in a wide range of meetings through a continuous period of 6 months without prior approval. I'm not going to list what it also includes, but basically it's just meetings of the authority, subcommittees of the said authority, a joint body, joint board, attendance as representative of the authority at a meeting of any body of persons. Those wider group meetings that may qualify as attendance outside the Council do not appear in the municipal diary. They cannot be regularly monitored by a ModGov system. So should any member appear to have missed 6 consecutive meetings on the ModGov system, the Council would be required, on request, to submit details to their attendance at such meetings to the proper officer. If the elected member cannot supply the evidence they have attended a qualifying meeting, after a fair procedure, the proper officer would, on the necessary evidence, and declare the vacancy pursuant to Section 85. Ultimately, it is for members to monitor their own attendance on ModGov, with the requirements of the Local Government Act 1972 being explained to all members on induction, and it's up to them to, as I say, monitor their own attendance. The second part of your question, at the last Council meeting, I brought to the attention of officers that it appeared an elected member that I shall not name had not attended for 6 consecutive months. I repeat this to the Chief Executive on Thursday, and as you've already made clear, Madam Mayor, and indeed we've made clear in the past, the Council as a corporate body does not comment on any action it may or may not be taken against an individual or elected member. Indeed, I'm informed that this would be a breach of general data protection regulations. However, I have every confidence in the Chief Executive and the monitoring officer in this matter. I'm positive the actions were taken as outlined in part 1 of my answer, which was, should any member appear to have missed 6 consecutive meetings of the Council will be required, on request, to submit details as to their attendance at such meetings to the proper officer, and that was carried out.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maney, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. Well, without naming members, we all know now why there is an EB by-election. And quite frankly, I'd like to share your confidence in officers, but I have to say I'm astounded that it took a member to report another member's absence. And in your answer, you said something along the lines that if members appear to have missed 6 meetings on the ModGov system, the Council be required upon request to submit details of their attendance. That's all very well and good if it's being monitored at officer level. My question therefore is, as it is wholly unacceptable that members should have to monitor other members' attendance, what is being done to ensure that investigations are initiated at officer level by officers and not due to the intervention of members? Because had you not intervened and had you not reported the absent councillor who won't be named lack of attendance, he will still be representing the people of Lakewood tonight, even though he was unfit for
public office. And in my view, that is a failure at the very highest.
I think this
Thank
is...
you, Madam Mayor.
I'd like to intervene here, and I'm not going to allow you, Councillor Gledhill, to continue with this line of questioning. I think it's totally wrong that we bring these debates into this chamber. This is a question time where we've got members of the public present that want to know about this council. If there's anything that you want to take up with officers or anything else, it should be done in the privacy outside of this chamber. I'm going to continue now with the questions.
Yeah, they are.
Councillor John Kent, can you please ask your question of Councillor Gledhill?
Would Leader of the Council set out the benefits to the local community of the Conservative administration's plans to spend £10 million on building new council offices?
Councillor Gledhill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. Obviously, I'll try my best to answer it, as this is quite clearly in the public interest. It's in two parts, Madam Mayor. The Grays South Regeneration Programme is an ambitious £40 million plan to enhance the space around Grays rail station and create a transformed gateway into the borough and civic quarter along to the South Essex College Grays campus. This was something that the Conservatives were fully in support of whilst Labour and the Council made the original proposals for the change to the whole of Grays. As well as replacing the level crossing with a pedestrian walk-through, as I've been told it's called, and enhancing the public realm, the extension to the civic offices will benefit the community by directly transforming a key site in the wider regeneration of Grays Town Centre, which will bring additional jobs, including apprenticeships and training and investment to the local area. It will be providing a modern, public-facing, community-focused and fit-for-purpose building for the residents and visitors that come to Thurrock. Provision for a new multifunctional spaces for social use and hire by the local community, including a new cafe, a registry office and ceremonial gardens, so those people that wish to get married at the registry office have a much nicer vista when it comes to their photographs and enjoying one of the happiest days of their lives. There will also be areas set aside for those who become homeless and waiting for temporary accommodation, to wait with dignity and to store their belongings whilst they wait. Other rooms set aside for residents to engage with services in private where needed, again to maintain a level of discretion and privacy. The implementation of the civic office extension will enable us to support the economy of the town centre and provide an inspiration and leadership for the regeneration projects in Grays. Our commitment to the investment in Grays will bring confidence, and certainly for private investors and developers will bring forward their own investment projects aligned with ours. We certainly could not expect the new town centre mall owners, the Wetherspoons, or indeed any other future partners to invest in Grays or indeed Thurrock if we cannot set the scene ourselves. The second part of this is I do need to make clear where the £10 million comes from. This is 4.15 from the capital programme agreed in your budget in February 2015. This was on top of the 5.2 million you spent refurbishing the non-public parts of this building. £400,000 allocated as a new budget by this administration in 18-19. £2.8 million of estimated income from the sale of the post-completion of the soon-to-be defunct Civic Offices 1 building, which is basically that part, which will end up being cost neutral. £2.2 million from other existing feasibility and business case budgets, along with the money set aside for the maintenance improvements for the future of CO1, which, as I say, will be defunct. So in short, nearly half of this was set aside by your administration, a quarter was funded from the sale of what will be the defunct empty building eventually, 1/12 from the additional funding from the Conservative administration, and 3/12 from the existing budget set aside to improve the way this council does business, and the maintenance of the building will no longer exist.
Councillor John Kent, do you wish to pose a supplementary question?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'm grateful for the confirmation that it is around £10 million. I couldn't really, from the answer that the leader gave, get to the core of what he thinks will improve life for residents. He spoke about transforming the site. What that actually means is compulsory purchasing every shop south of the railway line in Grays and demolishing them to make way for new council offices. He spoke about a ceremonial garden. We have to remember that these new offices will be built on the Mulberry Gardens, that's there dedicated to the memory of the D-Day landings. It talks about what sounded like better management of homelessness as homeless people come into the building. I don't think we should be better managing homelessness. I think we should be eradicating it, Madam Mayor. Yeah. And then finally, he spoke about a new register office for things like weddings. You know, frankly, Madam Mayor, I think that's backward thinking. We have plenty of places in Thurrock that are licensed or could be licensed for weddings. The authority should be looking at signposting people to those venues rather than spending £10 million on creating one of our own. So the question is, Madam Mayor, what is the key, core, clinching argument for this £10 million from the Leader of the Council?
Councillor Churchill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've said it once, I've said it twice, and I shall say it again. We need to be bringing more investment into Grays, not just this council office. What we do here is a catalyst for many other things that are will hopefully happen, and indeed will encourage those investors to come to Grays and to Thurrock and see the council doing their bit. We need to match it. And it's not about eradicating homeless. It'd be lovely to eradicate homeless, but the reality is homeless cases will still happen. And I'm sorry, they deserve as much dignity as anybody else. I hate to see that those poor residents sitting outside in the current reception, the reception that you didn't spend any money on at all, but put nearly £5 million away for, £5 million away for, actually sitting there on display with all their goods. I think that's absolutely terrible and degrading. So that would be gone. So moving people to new licensed premises to have their weddings. Not everybody's got that kind of money, John. We hear time and time again, you know, there's not enough money in the economy, there's people are poor, and they can't afford this, they can't afford that. But I'm sorry, when it comes to their wedding day, they all try to do as much as they possibly can. We're doing our little bit within this by supplying a registry office that is fit for purpose, not just somewhere that is in a building that is long overdue for regeneration in itself. So it's not just about what's going to happen here. That's that typical closed-minded of Labour. It's just, well, what can we see? What can we have a go at? They do not see the bigger picture. Madam Mayor, this is about the bigger picture of Grays and Grays regeneration, not just about finishing off the job that this Labour administration, when they were in charge, failed to do by putting the rest of the offices first, not our residents, and we're making sure it's fit for the purpose as we go into not only 2020, into 2030, 2040, and for the future as we go forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor John Kane, do you wish to pose a second supplementary question?
Madam Mayor, if the Leader of the Council is so worried about the dignity of homeless people, he doesn't have to wait for new offices to be built. He can spend some of the money that's been put to one side on dealing with that issue now. He talks about the bigger picture. I've now asked twice. I haven't had the bigger picture. I've had an awful lot of management speak, but I haven't had a single good reason for spending £10 million of capital money on building new council offices. So I ask the Leader of the Council at least, will he reconsider, Madam Mayor, and scrap these plans?
Councillor Churchill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It just shows you how far backwards Councillor Kent is in what we're actually doing in this office. We've already set aside a small area to improve the dignity of those that are homeless whilst they're waiting for accommodation. But sometimes it's just not enough. It's outside the control of Thurrock Council at the moment, and hopefully as we go forward and we do build new homes that will help, that will improve. You asked for, you've not seen one reason. I've given you plenty of reasons, John. Regeneration of Grays, something that you put forward under your administration that we are delivering. We are delivering that £5 million that you put aside to do exactly the same kind of work, but as usual, let's fiddle with what we've got rather than look at the bigger picture. And I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, this Conservative administration looks beyond the front doors that currently exist. We look to the future and how that will improve the customer experience for those that are coming in, for those that are going to have weddings, for those that need that bit of dignity in one of their most toughest times of life, for those going through the happiest day of their lives equally, and to ensure that we are getting the regeneration that we need from outside government and council spend, that people want to spend their money, improve the high street and improve Grays for everyone.
Thank you. We just have over 2 minutes for the remaining questions. I will ask Councillor Redfield to ask Councillor Howden the question. I will stop when we get to our 30 minutes, as is the dictate, and I will then ask if people want a written reply or to hold it over. I guess it's going to be written replies this evening. Councillor Redfield, can you pose your question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Legal advice given on the 13th of June 2018 Cabinet report regarding the free school programme and land disposal stated that the local authority would be legally obliged to consult should it agree to dispose of open space, which includes land used for recreation. The land disposed of for the potential construction of Alsett Heath Academy and Blackshots fits this definition. Would the portfolio holder therefore detail what consultation the Council undertook prior to the disposal?
Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before disposal can be effected, a 2-week consultation is required under the Local Government Act. The consultation on this site ran between the 12th and the 25th of July. A notice of consultation was placed in the 12th and 19th of July editions of the Thurrock Gazette. Physical copies of the notice were placed at several points around and on the site on the 12th of July. Letters were also written to local stakeholders and interested parties on the 4th of July, notifying them of the forthcoming consultation. For anyone who is concerned that they believe it may have been a quiet consultation, I would remind them that I had multiple public questions in this chamber, multiple questions from members in this chamber, 2 separate cabinet reports and a planning committee report, all in public, all in the chamber. The proof is really in the pudding that I've had multiple emails from local people, formal letters were lodged during the consultation, and the press have dedicated multiple column inches to this issue. And as I said in the past, Madam Mayor, I'm extremely proud that we're delivering £70 million investment to deliver 3,500 new school places in this borough.
Thank you very much. You may pose your supplementary, but I don't think we're going to have time to answer it. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the light of the new Alsett Heath school being delayed for a few months, can the portfolio holder clarify that the children starting in September will have a place to go?
Councillor Howard.
Yes.
Thank you. We have now come to the end of question time. I'm going to go through the questions that haven't been answered and ask the councillors if they would like a written response to their question. First of all, we have Councillor Redfield.
Can I resubmit, Madam Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cherry.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like the Councillor Watkins to ask me where I can make improvements, and I'd also like him to ask every councillor where they, on their wards, can make improvements to stop fighting.
So would you like a written response?
A written response to every councillor.
That was really good. Thank you very much. Councillor Worrell.
4 years.
As this is the last meeting, Madam Mayor, I think it'll have to be a written one.
Councillor John Kemp.
Written, please.
Councillor Ackenbellion.
Written, please.
Councillor Smith.
Written, please.
And Councillor Allen.
Can I resubmit, please?
Thank you very much. That's the end of question time. We now move on to our next item on the agenda, which is item 14, reports from members representing the council on outside bodies. Does any member wish to make a report on their outside bodies? No? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 15, minutes of committees. These are listed on the agenda on the contents page. Does any member wish to speak? No. Moving on to item 16, motions update report, found on pages 137 to 138. Does any member wish to speak? No. Thank you very much. We now move on to motions. 2 motions have been submitted. However, motion 1 has been withdrawn by Councillor Holloway prior to the committee. So we move to motion 2, and I will ask Councillor Duffin, do you wish to propose and then speak to your motion? You have 5 minutes. Councillor Duffin, you have 5 minutes allocated for this.
I won't take that much time. The idea of the motion and the issue we have, as this evening, as we've done, voted for not the full council tax increase. We're going to be punished by the government for doing this, based on extra money taken away out of our business rates. So it's basically calling on the government to stop this practice. Council shouldn't be punished for not raising council tax to the maximum amount. From what I've heard, it's got unanimous support, which is really good. Hopefully we'll actually see some action though, because action speaks louder than words.
Seconded. Councillor Spill. Would any member would you like to speak now or reserve your right to speak?
I'll reserve my right.
Anybody wish to speak? Councillor Gledhill.
I'll keep very brief, Madam Mayor, because I'm sure everyone would like to agree this, as do I. As I mentioned earlier, this is a really good motion. It does say to reverse the policy based on local authorities not to increase. Actually, there's a consultation in relation to this. Irrespective of consultation of policy, we know one tends to lead to the other. So let's actually get in the front of this one, which is why we're supporting this, and make it very clear that it's unfair. We're doing really well with our finances. Everyone here has agreed that. Why on earth should we be penalised, especially when we're such a large business rate, indeed one of the largest business rate collectors in the entire country? Why should we be penalised? But again, as I said before, this is another example of why we cannot leave all central government money funding to local authorities from central government, because some man will come up with an idea, they'll try and enact it in the way that they had, and there'll be winners and losers. And in this case, as Councillor Duffy quite rightly points out, we will be losers if we go down one route, and we'll be maintaining the same if we carry on the proportion in the way that they do now. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Spielman, would you like to say your second speech now?
No, we've got a brief, haven't we, so that'll do.
Councillor Duffy, do you want to sum up or go
I'll just sum up with regards to consultation. Obviously, this is the policy which the government has now. The consultation is to change it, to move to from notional to actual. From everything I heard, it sounds like they're not going to go that way. Hopefully, with some bit of pressure, and hopefully more councils around the country will follow, then we'll actually get some movement, because, hey, I don't want to just see council tax freezes, I want to see cuts, 2% every year, but if the government punishes us, it makes it harder to deliver.
All those in favour of the motion? Any against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you. Can members now please stand for the close of the meeting? Good luck to all those up for election in May. Safe journey home. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.